Today we are going to be talking about Pro Tools, and today's just like a basic overview of all Pro Tools things. AJ, should we have Pro Tools open? I think it would probably be a good idea to have Pro Tools open if you want, or if you want to watch me do it first and you can concentrate on what I'm doing and then go back and watch the video and do it with the video later. You can do it like that as well. But if you want to follow along with Pro Tools right now, that's perfectly acceptable. Just keep in mind I do have to get through a lot of material, so I can't go too slow. I have to go a little bit fast. So I don't know, it might be the best idea would be to just kind of watch me do it first and then go back and do it with the video a little bit later. I'm not sure. That's really kind of up to you. And then Tony says, how do I go to the discounted Pro Tools SAE gives us? It's $25 a month. Yep, as Eduardo says, 25. It's not 25 a month. It's 25 for 3 months. Actually, it's 25 for 90 days, and that equals out to about 100 for the year. And Tony, I will actually let's talk about that in Zoom. I'll give you the link and everything in Zoom, because right now I just want to kind of get things going with this stuff and kind of move as quick as possible. But we will talk about that. But if you want to research it, what I always do is I just do a Google search for Avid Education Price. If you do that search, Avid Education Price will get you that discount price. All right? Okay, so what I've got here is I've opened up Pro Tools, and we're going to start with this area here. This is our Pro Tools setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick setup here. And what we're covering here actually is in here, this part here, this getting started part. This is like the second page. I'm going to kind of skip this Pro Tools history and stuff for now. The main thing that's important that you take away from this page right here is there's two different types of Pro Tools systems. There's what they call the native system, which is everything is done right on your computer. And there's a TDM or HD system, and nowadays that's actually called Ultra. So the old word for it, the old original word for it was TDM system, then it was called the HD system, now it's called Pro Tools Ultra. And basically that's where you can use DSP chips, which are separate chips. You can see in this little picture right over here, there are these boxes outside of your computer that help you offset the processing. And nowadays, actually a lot of that can be done right on your computer. You just need a special account for it, a special iLok account to use some of the plugins. But that's the main thing with Pro Tools, and you'll find those Ultra systems in studios a lot. And one of the cool things about those is they have ultra low latency. If you don't know what latency means, basically that's the time between it's like a delay that happens inside of your computer with your recording and how you hear stuff. That's the quick version answer of latency. We're going to actually dive into it in more detail in a different lesson. We're going to come back and talk about latency. But Ultra has really low latency. You can have more tracks, you can have more effects plugins. It's upgradable. If you need even more tracks, you can just buy some more DSP chips. It's a really cool system. But the important part for y'all to remember is that you can actually go back and forth between native and Ultra systems. So if you're working at home on a native system just on your laptop or something, and then you want to take that song or something to a professional studio, then you can do that, and you can actually open up on both versions of Pro Tools, no problem. The only thing that's really going to change is any kind of plugins that might be different, stuff like that, and track counts and things. But nothing that's really going to affect you at home, especially in the beginning. So that's the main thing we need to take away from this first page here. Next is this getting started here, and this talks about some different things here. So let's go ahead and go through all these, and that's what we're looking at here is this right here. This is the kind of getting started page. And over here on the left-hand side, we have 3 tabs here. We have Create, which is to make a new session. Then we have Recent, which are you can open up some old sessions that you've done in the past or you've worked on recently. Or you can open up a project, which is something for like working with somebody online together with. The Create section here, this is the main one you're going to be starting off with most of the time. So first of all, we're going to name it whatever we want to name, and I've just gone ahead and given it a name, Pro Tools Setup. like that. You can store it wherever you need to. You can store it local, which is what I'm doing. That's on your computer or on your hard drive that's connected to your computer. Or you can click on collaboration and cloud backup. Again, that's for project stuff. I'm not going to do anything like that right now. I don't usually work like that. You can also create something from a template. A template is kind of like a preset for everything inside of your DAW. And we're going to be talking about templates in Pro Tools. We're going to talk about templates in Ableton Live. And if you want, we can talk about templates in Logic as well. But for now, we're going to just kind of ignore that. And we're going to go down here to the important stuff down here at the bottom. So down here at the bottom, we have this here, file type. This is, we have some options here. We have WAV or AIFF. Now, they're both fine and they both sound great. They both sound the same. But WAV is a bit more compatible throughout the world than AIFF is. AIF is a file type that was made by Apple a long time ago, and it's used a lot in the industry. But if you really want to make sure that your audio files are compatible across the board, you really want to go with the WAV files and not the AIF files. So I always just recommend people use AIF there. Next, we've got our bit depth over here. 24-bit is what I always use. 16-bit is older, 32-bit is newer, 24-bit's kind of right there in the middle, and it's still widely used. So that's what I really recommend these days, is just keep it at 24-bit there. The sample rate. Depending on what you're doing, you're going to use different sample rates. For audio stuff, if you're making music that's just for audio, to play in a club or for your friends to listen to, something like that, then you want to stick with 44.1 or 88.2. If you're doing audio for video, for digital video, you want to go with 48 or 96. And then you have these two higher numbers here as well, 176 or 192. But just keep in mind, for audio stuff, for music, then it's going to be 44.1, 88.2, 176.4, or for video, 48, 96, 192. I'm just going to keep it at 44.1 right now. I don't really have any special reason that I need to go up to 88.2 kilohertz. Then we've got the I/O settings here. Now the I/O settings, we're going to come back and talk about these in detail at another point, at a future date. So I just, right for now, just use stereo mix. And we're going to come back on another day and talk about what all these different things mean and how we can set these up. You can see I've got one that says Tony I/O settings right here, and iPad I/O, stuff like that. But for now, we're just going to use stereo mix. That's the basic one. Pretty much every time you open up a new session, if you don't know what to use stereo mix. Try not to use last used. That's fine if you're just working on the same computer all the time, but if you're bringing sessions in from other places, it can start to mess with your like what your setup is in here. So go ahead and use stereo mix. Over here on the left-hand side is interleaved. Interleaved, talks about, it basically tells Pro Tools how to record audio and how to deal with stereo audio left and right. So interleaved, what it does is it takes your left side and your right side and it puts them together into one audio file. We're going to come back and talk about that here in just a minute. Okay. And then down here at the very bottom it says prompt for location. Basically what that means is every time you make a new session, it's going to ask you, where do you want to save this? If you want, what you can do is you can go ahead and make a location on your hard drive to just always save your Pro Tools sessions. As you can see down here, mine is users Tony Grund, my name, documents, sound, Pro Tools projects, and then I can put it in there. And so that's where I'm just going to go ahead and keep it there. Once you've got all this stuff set up, you can hit create. Now, before I hit create, we're just going to look at this page here and you're going to see, this is just kind of explanations of everything I just talked about. Use the WAV file, it's most compatible. 44.1 and 88.2 are for audio, 48.96 are for video. Bit depth, 16 is CD quality. I don't really know who's using CDs anymore. 24-bit is probably the one that you want to use. I/O settings, stereo mix, interleaved, turn it on, leave on, interleaved. Okay, so that's all just the stuff right here, and then we hit create. Once I hit create, it makes a new page for me here, a blank, empty session that we can now start to mess around with. All right, so let's just go to the notes And this notes here, before we move on into Pro Tools deeper, just a little word about interleaved. This is basically a diagram of what interleaved means that I've got on my screen right here. So I have this file here. This one here is interleaved. You can see the left and the right sides are together. It's one file. If I go on my hard drive and I look at this, down here in this, this one Pro Tools Lab, which you're going to be downloading later on today, these are all, some of these are stereo, some of these are mono. And if I look at the size of these, let's go over here and look at the size. I can kind of tell which ones are stereo, which one are mono by the size, because what happens is when it's a mono file, it's just one channel. When it's a stereo file, it's two channels, left and right. So it's twice as big as a mono file. So if I have a mono file that's 2 seconds long, and I have a stereo file that's 2 seconds long, the mono file is going to be half the size as the stereo file. So this mono file, it's 2 seconds long, but it's only one channel. So it's going to be half the size as the stereo file, which is two channels, a left and right. And you can see that here in this diagram here. So my loop it would be loop.wave, 10 megabytes, it's one stereo file, it's a left and right together in one file. And then if it's non-interleaved, that's going to be loop.wave.l and loop.wave.r. They're each going to be 5 megabytes. It's going to be two mono files. If you want to see this in your Mac operating system, what you can do is you can click on something and hit Command I. I hit Command I and it pulls it up, and this will tell me what I'm looking at over here. So I'm looking at this here. This is here, right here, we can see where it says more info. It tells me how long it is. It's 11 seconds long. The audio channels, it's stereo, and that's what we're looking at right here. This one here is 16-bit, and it's 44.1. Now if I open up this other one here, this base one, if I hit Command I, it's going to pull it up. I'm going to put it right next to it, and we can see they're both 11 seconds, but this one here is mono. This base file is mono. This drum loop is stereo. They're both 16-bit. Now, eventually I'm going to put these into my Pro Tools session, and you might say, well, hold on, wait. You just made the session 24-bit, and now you're bringing in 16-bit files into the session. Well, that's okay, because modern DAWs can actually utilize 16 or 24-bit or 32-bit in the same session. So the computers now are powerful enough and smart enough to be able to just say, okay, these should all be sounding the same. It used to be that if you pulled a 16-bit audio file into a 24-bit session, it sounded really weird. Nowadays, it doesn't work like that anymore. It sounds fine. Everything sounds good. All right. Now, the reason why I wanted to go ahead and bring this up first is because I want to go ahead and look at this on my hard drive, and I want to show you some things. So what we're doing is here, we're going to go over, I'm going to skip over here to the end because I want to show you a couple things with the folder structure of what we just created on our hard drive, what this is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Finder, and I'm going to find my session that I just created. I'm going to put this here in the corner. We're going to go here to Sound, and we're going to go to Pro Tools, which is right here, Pro Tools Project. And in here, we're going to go to, what was this one called? It was called Pro Tools Setup, I believe, right? Yes. Okay, here we go. Pro Tools Setup. There we go. So if I open this up, we can see in here, there's a few different folders that are in here. And these folders are reflected on this diagram that's right here on your screen right now. So in here, we've got our Pro Tools session files, which is name.ptx, and that's what we're looking at right over here, Pro Tools setup.ptx. This is your main Pro Tools session. This is the session where you're doing all of the work. Basically, this file right here is what's reflected on our screen here. If I can switch back and forth between these two windows, this is my Pro Tools session, which is the .ptx file right here. Now, in this here, we've also got another folder that's session file backups. That's this one right here. This is going to have the same, it's going to look the same, and these are going to have all these like what we call backup files. So it's going to have the same name, Pro Tools Setup, right? Same name as this one here, Pro Tools Setup. And then in here, file backups, Pro Tools Setup .back.000.ptx. Now, what happens is my session, as I have my session open, every 5 minutes or so, which I can change, every 5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you set it to, Pro Tools is going to automatically create a backup file, and that's going to go into this folder right here. This is really useful because if your Pro Tools session crashes, or if you delete something that you didn't want to delete or whatever, you can always go back and get it again. This is one of my favorite things about Pro Tools. It's all right here. The way it does it is very cool and clear and easy to see, and you can get back to these sessions. This is essentially just a Pro Tools session. It's no different than your regular session that you've got right here. The only difference is that this is created automatically in the background. So you've got that folder right there. It has all your backups in here. Now, here we have the wave cache. The wave cache is really a kind of a file that is holding information about your waveforms, what Pro Tools is drawing on the screen for you. This one is not super important. You can see here in my diagram on the screen, it does not have a star next to it. See, these two here, the Pro Tools session file and the session file backups, both have a star next to them. The wave cache does not have a star next to it. The reason why it does not have a star is because you could throw it away. It's not a big deal. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to hurt anything. Pro Tools will just rebuild it again when you open it. So if you threw this away, it'd be no problem. You do not want to trash your Pro Tools session file or your session file backups. You really need to keep those and do not throw them away into the trash at all. And you can see here, I've got it written down right here. Do not trash these. This is super, super important. Anything with a star next to it is really important. You do not want to trash it. Okay. Now, these three things that we just talked about up here, these are always going to be there. So let me just show you what happens. If I go ahead and close out my Pro Tools session, let me just save this and I'm going to close it out. Now you'll notice in my folder here, everything just disappeared. And the reason why it just disappeared is because I actually don't have any data in anything else other than the Pro Tools setup and the session file backups. You can see even that the wave cache just disappeared as well. And the reason why it disappeared is because there's no waveforms in the session. There's no audio files or anything like that. If I open up the session again, and I can do that just by double clicking the thing here, it pulls up all those folders again. They all come back here. And if we look, you can see I've written this down where this pink line, everything below it will exist or not exist depending on if it's actually in the Pro Tools session or not. So I wrote down here, these only exist if there's something in them. And so your audio files folder will go away if there's no audio files in your session, or your bounced files folder will go away, clip groups, video files, all these folders will go away. So the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I don't want you to stress it if you go into your Pro Tools folder one day and you're like, wait, where's my bounced files? Or where's my video files folder? It's not there, I can't see it. What's going on? The reason why it's not there is because there's just nothing in there. It doesn't need to be there. So Pro Tools just kind of gets it out of there, gets rid of the clutter for you on your computer screen there. All right, we'll come back and talk about these these session file backups in a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of what you're looking at on your actual computer. Now, one last thing. All this stuff we just talked about is in this Pro Tools session folder. That's what this thing is called. It's called the Pro Tools session folder. That's this one right here on my screen here. And these are all Pro Tools sessions here. So if we go in here and we look at this, we'll see there's other things in here. This one has like audio files in it. You can see here's some audio files here. And this one, you know, here's some that have other, well, these don't have, you can kind of tell by the size what it's going to have in it. So for example, this one here, Sharp Hand Joe, has a lot of stuff in it. It's got some, you know, a lot of drum files and things like that. There's quite a lot of audio files in here. But I want you to please pay attention to what I'm actually clicking on here. If I click on the folder, I'm just going to use the Sharp Hand Joe file as an example. If I click on this folder here, what happens is that I open it up and there's all these files in here. Well, this is what's all the files that are inside of there. everything on my screen right here. See how I get this like folder that's kind of around everything? This is what's super, super important. If you're working on a session with a friend and your friend is in a different computer somewhere else, or you're taking your session to a studio, or if you're turning in a session to me for a project, then what I need to have, what your friend needs to have, what your partner needs to have is everything that's in this folder. It's not enough to just give them the PTX file. This is super important. This is literally, there's a question about this on every single test, every time we talk about it, everything. This is something that people invariably forget to do, and I really want to kind of make it so you are so sick of listening to me talk about it that you're just like, Tony, I get it. We need to send the whole folder to people. Yes. You're gonna hate me by the end of this for saying this so many times, but I'm gonna say it because it's super, super important. Okay, so what you need to do when you're sending your session to somebody, and if I say, hey, can you zip up that file for me, like this Midio one, right? So this one's here. If I open it up, there's all this stuff in here. There's some audio files, and actually, is there any audio files? No, that's all backups. Hold on, let's go down to this audio test here. This one here. It has a little audio file in it right here, okay? And Eduardo says, why is that? And that's a great question. The reason why it is right here is because if I want to send over, let's say, for example, let's see, what do we got here that I can open up? Vocoder test, Pro Tools Lab, vocoder test. What's in here? Yeah, okay, there's some stuff in here. Let's open this one up. Let's just see what's in here. I don't even remember what this one is. So we're gonna open this up. And boom, in here I've got some MIDI stuff. I've got this vocoder thing here, and I got this audio file. And this is all stuff that I recorded in. Okay, so what's going on here is I've got this audio file that's inside the session. Now, if this audio file is where it lives is inside the audio files folder right here. If you can see me open this up, this is where these audio files live. So if I hit play on this, let's see what happens. Cool. All right, so here, let's go ahead and solo this one here. Can we hear that? We can't hear that at all. Oh, it's because it's going into the bus here. Let me just change this. So, no, can't hear that. Why are we not? Oh, hold on, let's take this off. I wanna feel your words. There we go. Embrace me like skin of... Let me try again. So you can hear that. Let me just get rid of that last part there. So you can hear, this is actually, if you remember from yesterday, this is from one of the songs we talked about yesterday, Rubadoo. I wanna feel your words, embrace me. Also, let me just ask y'all a question. Is this loud enough? Can we actually hear this? Just let me know if I need to make any adjustments to like levels or anything like that. Okay, I'm gonna put a master track in here, a little bit louder. Okay, I'm just gonna push it right here. This is something I normally wouldn't do, but I just want to make it louder instantly right now. I wanna feel your words. Okay, so we had this audio file here, and what I did was I put a vocoder on it, and let's go ahead and put this into bus number 1 here, and it kind of recorded into here. And let me go ahead, and this is what I recorded in. This is with the vocoder. Wanna feel your words, embrace me. So that's with the vocoder sound. Now, that's a pretty cool sound. Now, I recorded that sound using routing and everything like that. But when I recorded it, what happened was it came in here into this audio files folder. So the audio files folder is separate from the vocoder test Pro Tools session file. That's the PTX file over here. Let me just zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. So what I have here is I have this one here, which is basically the Pro Tools session that we're working with. But then I have these audio files, which are the recorded audio. It's all this stuff over here. So if let me just go ahead and pull this over. If I don't send the audio files folder to my friend, what will happen is, here, let me just show you what's gonna happen. Let me close this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this, call this I'm just going to give it a different name, X. And I'm going to open this up again and watch what happens. The devil speaking spell, it's funny. Now, Pro Tools is super confused. It doesn't know what to do. It can't find my audio files anymore. So it brings up this, this message here. It says, 3 audio files and 0 video files, blah, 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 things are missing. Would you like to skip all, manually find and relink, automatically find and relink, or regenerate missing render files without searching? So essentially what it's saying here is it can't find these audio files. So what do you want to do? Well, you can skip it and say, you know what, don't worry about these audio files. We don't need them anyway. Or you can say, I know exactly where they are, and I will tell you where they are. That's what manually is. Automatically says, why don't you just go ahead and search my whole computer? This can take a while. So my recommendation is, if you know where they are, use manually find. If you know they're in the same folder that Pro Tools session is in, then you can say automatically find. So for example, I know that they are in that same folder. So I'll go ahead and hit automatic. And it finds them super, super quick. Boom. Because they're in that same folder. They're right there. But I changed the folder name. That's why I couldn't find them. So what happens is, if you send it to your friend, but you only send this PTX file, they're not going to have the audio files. So when they open it up, they're going to get that message, but they're not going to be able to find those audio files because they're not going to have it. So they're going to be a really, really sad panda. They're going to be very sad, and they're not going to be able to hear this amazing music that you made for them. So that's why it's super, super important that we go ahead and not just send over the PTX file, which is the small file, but you have to go ahead and get this vocoder test, the whole thing, and send that whole folder to them. Right-click, compress, and now it makes this folder here, and you send that over to them. And again, we're going to come back and talk about the compression and all that stuff, how to compress it and stuff in a little bit later. But the main point of what I want y'all to take away from this right now is that you can't send just the PTX file. And this is something for your projects, for your homework assignments, where I require you to send me the whole session, everything. If you send me just the PTX file, I'm going to take points off. And I'm telling you right now, and people have said to me, Tony, why are you taking points off? Well, because you missed probably the most important step, because without those audio files, it doesn't matter how amazing the song sounds. People can't listen to it. Okay? So I hope that answers your question, Eduardo, or if anybody else had a question about that. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to save this. I'm going to go ahead and close it out, and we're going to go back over to my Pro Tools setup here. Open this up, and all right, there we go. Cool. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go back in my notes. I'm going to back up a little bit here, back to these pages here. Boom. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about plugins. And again, still in the basics, but I want to talk about plugins just because in order to use anything in Pro Tools, you're really going to need to start messing around with your plugins. A plugin is basically a program within a program. So you can see this green box here. We've got Pro Tools, and then the blue boxes in here are plugins. So Pro Tools is the main outlying program, and then I've got all these other little plugins, all these other little programs inside of here that are plugins. There are 2 types of plugins. There are effects plugins and there are instrument plugins. Effects plugins, they affect the sound. They change the sound. You can use effect plugins on audio files and stuff like that. So for example, if I go ahead and grab, let's see here. Let's grab let me just make this a little bit smaller so we can see my screen, and I'm going to close this down. So also just remember, if you are just joining us, please make sure that you let me know that you are here so that I can mark you present in the role, okay? So you can see here I'm still missing Regan, Tone, Antonio, Griffin, Bryant, Zach, Cedric, a few people here. So if you are here, please let me know that you're here. All right, thanks. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go down to the bottom here, my Pro Tools lab. I'm going to drag some of these in real quick so we can just see what we're looking at here, and so I can also just show you some stuff. So I'm going to drag in the drum loop and the bass loop here. Boom. So now I've got these in here. What I'm going to do is just to show you an example of what I mean by an effect. I'm going to go ahead and make a new stereo audio track. And we're going to put the drum loop in here, right here in the beginning. Boop. And so if I hit play on this drum loop, turn that down a little bit. Okay, cool. So we got that. I'm going to go ahead and loop that. So now it'll loop. And I'm going to just go ahead and throw on an effect plugin just to show you what an effect plugin is, what we mean by effect plugin. So I'm going to go over here and let's put a filter on this thing, okay? So I'm just going to go down here to my modulation, and I'm going to grab my vintage filter from Air. This is one that actually comes with Pro Tools that you can install in Pro Tools. There we go. Okay, so now if I open this all the way up here, you can see it sounds basically the same, but if I start to mess with this cutoff filter here, it's changing the sound. That's an effect. Right? And you can hear I can change that that sound a lot with this one effect. This is what I mean by effect plugin. That's this one right here. So types of plugins, it's an effect plugin. And as you can see on Pro Tools, they all go up here. Again, I'm moving a little bit fast as far as how to put them into Pro Tools because we're going to come back and talk about that, okay? Don't worry, I am going to come back and take you by the hand and lead you very slowly, but I just want to give you like an overview of a couple things first so we know what we're dealing with in terms of just Pro Tools and DAWs in general. So this is an effect plugin. Now, if I go ahead and make another track, I'm going to make an instrument track here. Oops, sorry, I made the wrong instrument track. Let me just delete that. And let's do that again. I accidentally hit the button, so it made mono. Okay, so now I've got this one here, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and throw an instrument on here. I'm just going to throw on here, let me see, do I have vacuum? I do not have vacuum. Boop, 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 boop. All right, here, we'll use the Mini V3. Here, I'll use this one. This is the little Mini Moog type of plugin. There we go. Thank you for installing this, blah, blah, blah. I do not need to see the... Okay, so you can't really see, you can kind of see, but you can see my hand is over here to the side, and what is the hotkey, the shortcut, keyboard shortcut on the keyboard to make a new track is Command-Shift-N. Command-Shift-N, but we're going to talk about that all in just a minute here, but it is Command-Shift-N. Yep. And the way I think of it, the way I remember it is Command-Shift-N for new, right? So hold on, Command-Shift and N, and you get a new track here, and you pull it up. But I've got some other really cool shortcuts that go along with that as well. So here we go. I've got my keyboard here. So if I wanted to go in here, this is what we call an instrument plugin. So if I go back to my notes, that's the other type of plugin right here, instrument, and this creates sound. So you can see, you can't really see the keyboard, but you can see there's something off to the side over here. This is the keyboard. And if I play that, it's making the sound right there. Oh yeah, we are definitely going to be talking about shortcuts. Don't you worry. I am a shortcut fiend, and we will be talking about these. And a lot of them are actually in the notes too. So if you go ahead and look at those notes, you'll see them, but we're going to get to them actually on the videos as well. So in here, this is something that actually makes the sound. This is creating the sound from scratch. So this is an instrument plugin. And there's lots of different types of instrument plugins. For example, this is a synthesizer. If I wanted to, let's go over here and grab a, let's grab Contact. And Contact is a sample, like a sample playback thing. And let this pull up, and you can see, once I get this going, like my gajillions of different ones I've got. My favorite one right now that I just got is this one here. And here I got this one, and this one's great. This one's my Oliver Arnold's piano that I just got from Spitfire Audio. And this is an amazing piano sound. Let's see. Beautiful piano sound, right? It's an instrument. Now, if I take this and I want to add an effect plugin to this track, I can do that by putting an effect plugin right here. So you can combine instrument plugins with effect plugins. So if I take my vintage filter and I've got my drums here. Let me just record a little piano part here. Pro Tools. I'm not, let's see here, like this. There we go. Oh wait, you know what? One more thing I have to do. Hold on. Keep forgetting. This needs to be the right tempo to record the MIDI here. I think it's 105. It is not. Hold on, let me just grab this real quick. Cool. It is. Oh. That is going to be 2. Cool. 90. That's what the tempo is. Okay. So let me just back this up a little bit. So I'm going to change this tempo to 90 so everything can be set up correctly. And again, I'm going to go through about like why I just did all that. I don't want to talk about it right now because it would be it's too far, it's too much too soon. But just trust me, we will come back and talk about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and record this. So I've got that there. Pull that over here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. There we go. Cool. Cool. Now I could take this and put an effect on here. I can even take the same effect right here and just copy it over. Put it down here like this. And you can hear how I changed the sound of that piano right there. So that's kind of combining everything together. Zach, what is up, buddy? How you doing? I'm gonna, cool, let's do it like that, boom. All right, so that's basically a quick and dirty kind of like what plugins are. So you've got the instrument plugins that create the sound, you got the effects plugins that change the sound, okay? And there's lots of each one, tons and tons of them, and we're gonna talk about a lot of them here within these classes. A couple things real quick. You've got native plugins, which would be basically programs that come with the DAW. So Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton Live, these all come with a bunch of native plugins, the first-party plugins, the ones that come with it. Then you also have third-party plugins, and you're going to hear people talk about these a lot during your career. Third-party plugins are plugins that are made by a separate company. There's a lot of very famous companies that make these, and actually Pro Tools has kind of a way to set it up. And again, I'm going to explain how to do this another time over here, where you can actually see the plugins by the different companies. So up here is plugin by the type of plugin. So you have EQ plugins and dynamics plugins, which is like compressors and limiters. Then you've got pitch shift plugins and reverbs, delays, modulation, all that stuff. Down here, the same plugins, but just categorized by the company. So here, let me just go over here and show you all these. So these are all different companies that make plugins, and as you can see, there's a lot of them. And I don't even own plugins by every single company that makes plugins, but there's already a lot of them here. You know, some of the big famous ones are FabFilter is a good one, And then you've got Native Instruments. Slate is really famous. Sound Toys is fantastic. Spitfire Audio, Spectrasonics is really good. Valhalla makes some of my favorite reverbs. Universal Audio, of course. I've got all the Universal Audio stuff here, so that's all really great stuff. Audio Damage. There's so many different companies that make these things. So that's what I mean here when I say third party. And finally down here we've got plugin formats. Now, if you're only using Pro Tools, you only have to worry about one plugin format, that's AAX. Plugin formats are basically the computer language that they use to write the plugin. And different programs use different plugin formats. So Logic uses audio units, and also Live, Ableton Live use audio units. VST plugins are used by Ableton Live, and then AAX is for Pro Tools. So as you can see here, down here on the bottom of the screen, is that Ableton Live can use audio units or VSTs. Logic can only use audio units, and Pro Tools can only use AAX. This is important when you're looking to download a new plugin or buy a new plugin, something like that. You have to be aware of what format it's made for. So there are some really cool plugins that are not made for Pro Tools. They don't make an AAX version, and you have to be aware of that. It doesn't, there's nothing you can do about it. So if you come to me and you say, Tony, I found this really cool plugin my friend uses in FL Studio, but I can't find an AAX version of it. What can I do? The answer is, well, you can maybe buy a wrapper, which is like a plugin to put a plugin inside of, or there's nothing you can do. And again, if you want to talk more about that, let's talk about that in Zoom. Hey, I can see again. Cool. All right. Next. All right. Pro Tools, Windows. We have two main windows in Pro Tools. That's this is called the edit window and the mix window. So you've got the mix and the edit window. These are the two main windows. They're not the only windows, but they're the two main windows. And the way we switch between them is you use Command equal. And that's the first shortcut that's super important. If you want some shortcuts, this is probably your most important shortcut. I guess a good question to ask at this point is, why do we use shortcuts? Why are they called shortcuts? Well, the reason why we use them is because they are a shortcut. It's a quicker way to do something. So if I want to switch between these two windows, I have a few ways to do it. I can either just put them here on my screen, and I can kind of like move things around so I can see both of them, and I can click back and forth on both of them. And that's what I used to do when I first started using Pro Tools. I didn't know any better, and I used to just sit here and have my windows kind of arranged on my monitor, and I used to click back and forth on them, and that's just how I worked. Another way that you can have your windows, change your windows, is go to Window, right here, right there. Click on this, and click on one or the other. So I can go to my mix window, I can go to my edit window. Or the way that I recommend is Command equals. Yep. Yeah, Command equals. Yep, Moises. Great. Yep. And this is the way I recommend. And as you can see, if I use Command equals, it just improves everything so much. It just makes my life so much easier, and it just makes it so much faster. It saves a lot of time when you add up all the amount of times that you're going to be switching back and forth between your windows. If you learn how to do it just like this, see how fast I can do it? If you learn how to do it like that, it's going to save you so much time over the course of years. In the short term, it doesn't save you much time at all. Just right now, it's like, oh, I only save myself about 5 seconds. But that 5 seconds adds up. All right. So the edit window is where we do all our editing. Hey, how about that? Fancy they named it like that. And the mix window is where we can do our mixing, but you can also do your mixing in the edit window. I know people who do all their work right here in the edit window. Right? But what I recommend is that you do, and this is just a personal preference. I like to do my mixing in the mix window just because I can see everything right there really easily. But I have friends who do everything right here in this window. So it's up to you however you want to do it. There's no really wrong way to do it. I would, however, recommend if you're doing everything on a laptop and you only have that little laptop screen that's like a 13-inch screen or a 16-inch screen or whatever, then I would recommend taking advantage of your two windows because it's not really enough real estate on one window. My monitor here that I have is a 27-inch monitor. I think it's 27 inches. This was like $150. I got it. It was on sale. It's not a super fancy monitor. It's just kind of large-ish. So, yeah. All right. And Nico says, is anybody else getting some lags? If you are getting some lags, just remember this. I'm recording everything, so it's going to be put up on YouTube later on today. So you'll be able to go back and watch it, hopefully lag-free, because I'm recording it into my computer directly. It's not going through the internet to be recorded. All right, so the edit window is where you do all your editing. Now, a couple things I want to look at, and this is this part of the notes right here. We have two views in here. You've got the edit window view on the left, and then you've got the timeline view across the top. And let's just take a look at what that encompasses. That's basically this stuff here. The timeline view is all these things here: bars, beats, minutes, seconds, tempo, meter, markers. And then the edit view is all this stuff going down here. And you can see these little icons here? This is how we can change this stuff. So for example, when I'm working on my music, usually I'm in 4/4 time, and I don't need to change my time signature. So I don't need to look at my time signature. If I click on this little button right here, this little icon, it allows me to change what I'm looking at here. So I could go through and I could put in my time code and stuff like that if I wanted to, or I can take it all out. I usually like to keep my minutes and seconds in there. I can also take out my meter. I could put in my meter, put in key signature, put in my chords, stuff like that. I traditionally haven't used the key thing very much, but it's something that I think I probably would be using. Like, I actually like using key stuff nowadays a bit more than I used to. If you're using Logic, key is a big part of things. Ableton Live is the only one that doesn't really talk about key that much yet, but it's probably coming in some kind of a future update. But for now, I actually don't really use my key that much. However, I do use the markers and I do use the tempo. The tempo is pretty important to set your tempo, and the markers is really important. The markers is one of my most important things. Now, this here does connect, the top one here where it says bars and beats, minutes and seconds. This one connects up here to this main counter. You can change what you're looking at in the main counter, and you see how it just highlighted my minutes and seconds when I change this. I can click on this little arrow key here and I can change what's highlighted, and this is changing how my session is working. This is quite important. Right here, I can also click here to switch between these two things. So I like to keep my sessions in bars and beats, but if you were doing like a movie, you want to be time code or something like that, you can change it right over here. It depends on what you're working on, how you're going to look at it. If you're mostly doing dialogue editing and stuff like that for movies, you're probably going to be using time code or feet and frames or something like that. If you're mostly doing music, you're mostly going to be using bars and beats. So it really depends on what you're going to be actually doing most of your work in. Down here, the edit window view is this stuff over here. And if I click on this one, I can change what I'm looking at here. Let me just zoom in so you can see a little bit easier. So there we go. I clicked on this icon right here. And now I can show or hide more items. So for example, if you're working on a really small screen, I recommend turning off your inserts and sends so it's just your I/O and your track color. I highly recommend keeping your track color on. It doesn't take up any extra space. If you are working on a larger monitor, if you have something that's like bigger than, say, 20 inches, then you're going to want to keep on your inserts and your sends, and that way you can just easily see what inserts you have on the track. So now I can see, oh, I've got a filter on this track, and I've got contact, my piano, and my filter on this track as well. These are where your plugins go, basically. Over here in this section is your volume and panning and stuff like that. And that's, you always want to be able to see that, so I always recommend having your I/O in here as well. But as you can tell, this is actually the same thing we're looking at in our mix window. So that's why if you have a smaller monitor, you do not need to have your inserts and sends. You can actually see all that stuff here in your mix window. So just hit the Command equals key and you're good to go. So once again, if you're using a smaller monitor, switch back and forth more between them. Do your mix stuff in the mix window just because you don't have much real estate, and use your edit window for only editing things is what I recommend. All right. Different track types in Pro Tools. Okay, so we have an audio track, an aux track, MIDI track, instruments, and a master track. And I've got a picture here. We're going to come back to that page in just a second. But a picture here to show each one of these tracks has a little icon on it to go ahead and show you what kind of track it is. And this is in the mix window. So we can easily see, if you kind of memorize these icons, which I'm not going to make you do, but just as you are working with Pro Tools, you'll probably memorize this stuff. You've got a little icon here that correspond with each one. The other thing is to keep in mind, whoops, wait, wrong thing. There we go. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you're working in Pro Tools, when I create a new track type, it's going to go ahead and put the name of that track type into the track name. So when you first create a track, it's going to tell you what kind of track you just created, unless you name that track. So if I go over here to my master fader, it says master. If I want to make a MIDI track, it says MIDI, right? And so you can see, here's my different track types right here. And those logos I was talking about, the little icons, are right here. Right here. These little icons right here. So with this picture, it tells you this is an audio, it looks like a waveform. This one here is an aux track, it's an arrow pointing down. Master is the sigma symbol. VCA is a little mix thing. MIDI is a MIDI connector, and instrument is a keyboard. Once again, you don't have to memorize those, but I find that it kind of helps when I'm making different track types. All right, so here's what your different tracks are for in Pro Tools. The audio tracks allow you to record, edit, and play audio. And audio tracks allow you to put insert effects on them. Sorry, I keep hitting the wrong thing because I keep thinking I'm switching my windows. So my audio track is this one right here, and as you can see, I've got audio on the track. I can record audio onto it, I can put audio on it, I can drag and drop audio onto it. It's gonna, if I hit play, it's gonna play audio back at me. All right, that's an audio track. Now, with the audio track, I can also put my plugins on an audio track. So here's my plugin right here. I open it up. Where is it? It's over there. Okay, so I open it up and my plugin pops up here. If I want to put more plugins, I can put more plugins. Right now we're looking at 5 plugins. You can actually have up to 10 plugins on each track. This is an audio track, so once again we can we can record, edit, and play audio on that track, and we can put insert effects on it. We can put plugins on the track. Insert effects are plugins. The aux track passes audio through. The aux track does not record or edit or play audio, and an aux track looks like this. Right over here, this one here that says aux. If I look at it in my window, it does not have anything on it for recording. It's just, see, it doesn't have a record button. The audio track, if we look up here, has a record button. See how it's flashing right now? That's my record button. It also has this I button to let you just pass audio through the audio track. It's got a solo and a mute. The aux track, however, does not have a record button. That's because we cannot record audio onto an aux track. The aux track is only for passing audio through. So it doesn't even have the I button because by default, it's just always passing audio through. We can solo an aux track, and we can also mute an aux track. Otherwise, the aux track looks very similar to the audio track, but the main difference is if I try to drag my audio file onto the aux track, it will not let me drag it down here. I can't do it. I'm trying to, it won't let me do it. I can move it left and right, but I cannot drag it down, right? And so that's because the aux track, let me just move that here. The aux track does not allow us to record or edit audio, okay? Now, because an audio track can record and edit and play audio, and an aux track cannot record and edit and play audio, people often think that an aux track is not as important as an audio track. And that's just not true at all. When I first started making music and using Pro Tools, I didn't really understand the power of aux tracks. Once I got really going with this stuff and I got good at my mixes, I started to realize, wow, aux tracks are super, super important. They might be just as important or more important even than an audio track. Because a lot of the magic that you create that makes your song not sound like a demo, but sound like a final finished product that sounds awesome, that people want to pay money for, really a lot of that stuff happens on the aux tracks. And the magic that you create, not just using audio tracks, but all the effects and all the ways that you can manipulate that audio and make it sound better. A lot of the stuff happens on aux tracks. So my point is that the aux tracks are super duper important. Please pay attention to them. Please understand them. And we're going to work really hard on understanding aux tracks and all the cool things you can do with them. I kind of think of the aux tracks as like the secret that the professionals know that the amateurs don't really know. The professionals understand how important aux tracks are. The amateurs don't. They kind of have this idea that's like, wait, I feel like I'm missing something. Like, why do my mixes not sound as good as these other dudes? And the reason is because you haven't learned yet how to harness the power of the aux track. But don't worry, we will do that. We're going to learn how to harness that power after we hydrate. Oh, hydration, so important. Okay, so next we are going to talk about a MIDI track. Now, a MIDI track is, let's see, my MIDI track is down here. Let's put this up here after the aux track. I'm going to go ahead and make these a little bit smaller here so we're not focused on them. Let's go ahead and look at this MIDI track here. This MIDI track is where you can, if you've got a keyboard or something like that, you can play onto the MIDI track. But the MIDI track is not the most important thing for playing instruments. If we look at the MIDI track, we've got basically in Pro Tools you have two tracks that use MIDI. You've got the MIDI track and you've got the instrument track. If we take a look at these two different tracks though, let's just start here at the bottom and go up. Now, starting right here, they both have faders. They both have record, mute, solo. They both have pan, and they both have these inputs, output section here. But then if we move up, we're going to notice they do not both have slots for your plugins. The MIDI track does not have any place to put plugins, and that's because you cannot put plugins on a MIDI track. The audio track has all sorts of places. The instrument track has places for plugins. The reason why is because the MIDI track is pure MIDI, and MIDI does not equate to audio. This is a little bit above your pay grade right now. We're going to come back to it and talk about this later. We're going to dive deep into MIDI, but not today. Just suffice it to say that MIDI is not audio. MIDI allows you to tell something to make audio, but it is not audio itself. The instrument track is actually a combination of a MIDI track here and an aux track here. So this aux track and MIDI track, you take these and smash them together, and that's what an instrument track is. So we're going to come back above your pay grade, yeah. We're going to come back and talk about it, but aux, MIDI combined equals instrument track. So here, the MIDI track allows you to record, edit, and play MIDI, but there's no audio, so we cannot use plugins. We cannot use insert effects on a MIDI track. An instrument track is very similar to a MIDI track. It can allow you to record, edit, and play MIDI data. But what you're going to hear coming back when it plays that MIDI data, you're going to hear audio. So if I go back over here, oops, if I go back over here into my session and I solo this instrument track, why? Oh, hold on, let me move that down here. Okay, so we can hear this. Now, this is a MIDI track, so what I can do is, it's an instrument track, but it's got MIDI information on it. So I can take these notes and let's just make these longer here. Make them drag them all the way out over here. Okay, cool. So we got that there. I'm gonna drag these over here. Yep, so now if I hit play, I don't want you to do that. Hold on one second. Boom. There you go. Cool, we can do that. And I can... Now, what's cool about MIDI is that, let's say, you know what, I'm not really in love with these notes here. Bum, 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 bum. No. Bum, bum, bum. Let's try that. Okay. That's pretty cool, right? But maybe I don't love that either. Let's go ahead and, oops, boop, boop. Let's take this and let's make it do it twice. And the second time it's going to do this new thing that I just did. Okay, so the first time it's going to do the first thing I played. The second time it's going to do the new thing that I just wrote in. And I just changed it right there. This is the big difference between instruments and audio tracks, is because even though we can hear both of them, with an instrument track I can easily go in and change the MIDI data to change the notes, to change the sound, to change whatever, the rhythm, anything, really, really quickly and easily. Whereas with an audio track, we're limited on what we can do with it. They're both cool, they're both different though. We can hear both of them, but what we're hearing is very different. With the audio track, I can't really change. Like if I wanted a different kick drum, I wouldn't be able to have a different kick drum here. Zach says, I've been using Logic for a while, but honestly, Pro Tools is just like way better. It's all subjective. I actually agree with you, Zach. I agree. I like Pro Tools more than Logic, but that's like a discussion that's like, it's just an opinion, really. They're both great. They both do stuff, but I actually agree with you. I like Pro Tools as well. But just wait until we get to Ableton Live. That's going to mind blown if you're making beats. All right, so in here, so that's our instrument track. That's our MIDI track. These are our different types of tracks. Now, one more time, just to kind of go over that, let's just go back over this real quick. Just the ones we talked about. Audio, you can record, edit, and play audio, and you can put plugins on it, insert effects. Aux tracks, you cannot record and play audio. It doesn't record anything. It just passes audio through, but that's actually really cool. You can still put plugins on there. You can use it for insert effects. You can also use it for send effects. We'll come back and talk about that. MIDI tracks, they record, edit, and play MIDI data, but there's no instrument on there. There's no audio on it. You can just use that to tell something else to play. I've got some keyboards on this side of me. I got some keyboards on this side of me that you can't really see right now. I will show them to you on another day. But we use a MIDI track to play my external synthesizers. Here, let me just give you an example. Oh, wow, it's heavy. I don't have it plugged in right now, but I have this thing here. This is an analog synth, and I would use a MIDI track in Pro Tools to play that analog synth. But there's no insert effects on there. There's no plugins on it because there's no audio. Then we have an instrument track, which is like a MIDI track. It's basically a MIDI track and an aux track combined together. Instrument track allows us to record, edit, and play MIDI data. We hear the audio because it does have a plugin on there. And hold on, I keep hitting that wrong. See, on this instrument track here, I've got my contact here. We can open it up, and I've got some instruments and effects and stuff on here. So it's kind of like a combination track. Finally, we have our master track. The master track is where all audio goes through before going out to the speakers. And on the master track, we can also have effects. So for example, if I want to put a compressor on this master track here, let's go ahead and just put a, let's put a 76, UA 1170, there we go. Put one of these on here, and this is not one that comes with Pro Tools, this is just one that I'm just throwing on here just to give you some examples of different things. Okay, so we got this one here, yep, cool. Go. And you can hear, like on the master track, it's like everything is going through it. And you can hear it breathing with the drums. Right, I'll pull it down here so it's not going to breathe so much. Okay, so that's the master track here, and again, you can put some effects on here, but usually people leave the effects off until like kind of the final stages of things for your mastering and stuff like that. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, hey, our lovely shortcuts. So here's a bunch of really cool shortcuts for you to create a new track. And who was asking before about creating a new track? I forget, but this is the page you definitely want to, oh wait, it was Metastrepo. That would be Matteo, yes. So Matteo, this is going to be your favorite page so far. Command Shift in here, and then these. Oops, wait, go back. There we go. These other things, these other commands here, are combined with this create a new track. This is stuff you do when you are creating a new track. So, for example, let's say that I want to create a stereo aux track, a stereo aux channel. So first, what I do is I hit Command Shift in. And that pulls up my new track dialog. On the new track dialog, we have a few things here. We have how many tracks do I want to create? We have mono versus stereo. We have audio track. What do I want to create? I want to create a routing folder, a basic folder, audio track, aux input, master fader, all these things. There's all these options here. Notice I haven't talked about the routing or basic folders yet. We will talk about those on another time. They're not actual tracks. Even though they are in the new track thing, they're not actually tracks. So we've got here, I want to make an aux input. I want it to be counted in ticks or samples. Just leave it at samples. Basically, you can leave the default, whatever it is. And I could rename it if I wanted to. Let's call this one reverb. I always abbreviate everything, so RVB, reverb. Okay, and let's make it stereo. Now, I just made a new stereo track, and it's called reverb. That took me forever. I do not want to take that much time when I'm making a new track. Now, before we continue real quick, I just want to say that the way that you actually delete tracks in Pro Tools is you right-click on the track name and you go down to delete. You can't just hit delete. It's a little bit annoying, but one of the reasons why it's in there is because in Pro Tools you cannot undo a deleted track, which is also annoying. So anyway, so let's do this the quicker way. If I want to make a new aux channel called reverb, I can hit Command Shift in, and if I hold down my Command key, okay, let's look at these instructions. I can hold down Command and use left or right to choose mono versus stereo, or up and down to choose my track type. Command Shift, I can add more tracks, and I can let go of Command to adjust the number of tracks. So what this means is, I want to create a stereo aux track. I hit Command Shift in, I let go of the shift key, hold down the command key, right arrow once, and then down arrow once. That's aux track. And I can hit tab to rename it reverb. Boom. I just created a new track. Okay. So let me just show you that one more time. I'm going to do two more times. One time I'm going to do it by using no shortcuts, just clicking with the mouse. And then I'm going to do it again by using shortcuts. So I can go up here to go to track. I can go to new track. I can go to stereo. I can go to aux and hit create. And boom, now I have a stereo aux track. I could do that. It's pretty quick. I think in Pro Tools now, I think you can also just double click to create the next track, which is also, it's the fastest way. But that kind of means that you've already been using that same track already. So let's actually create a track using shortcuts, and I'm going to show you how quick we can do it. All right, here we go. Boom, 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 boom. There's my new track. Let me do that one more time just so you can see that that wasn't a fluke. Okay, so I want to create a new aux track. Let's create a new audio track, a mono audio track. Boom. There's a mono audio track. Stereo audio track. Boom. There's a stereo audio track. Stereo aux track. It's that fast. So if you know your shortcuts for creating new tracks, then you're going to be able to fly with it. One more thing, I can actually create multiple tracks at the same time. So if I wanted to go ahead and create, let's say I want to create a couple of different tracks, different types, then we can use the shortcuts for that. So let's say create 2, 3 stereo mono audio tracks, 1, 2 stereo audio tracks, 4 aux stereo tracks. Boom. And there, I just recreated everything right like that. Super quick. By a literal wizard. So the thing is, so when I first moved to Japan, I bought Pro Tools. This is 1999. So I've been using Pro Tools for 20 years now. And when I got to Japan, I was in the studio, because I was working for the record label, and I was making my beats at home. I just bought Pro Tools because I wanted to take my beats and take them to the studio and let somebody else work with them and engineer them, because I wasn't that good of an engineer yet. And so what I did was I took him in, I sat down and I was working with the dude, and he was using Pro Tools, and he knew his shortcuts so well. He looked like he was typing on a keyboard. It was insane. And I'm just watching him, I'm like, I picked my jaw up off the floor, because I was just like, wow, okay, I need to learn this stuff. So what I did, there's 2 things you can do to learn your shortcuts really, really well. One thing is, if you go to the Help menu, under Help is Pro Tools Shortcuts right there, and it pulls this up. Now, what I recommend is you should download this thing. So if we go in here, click on this little download button here to download it. And then I recommend putting it onto your iPad and having it with you on your iPad, so you can always just reference your different shortcuts. That's one thing I recommend, is having your shortcuts right there. Another thing that I think is really, really helpful for your shortcuts is to have a keyboard cover that show you all your Pro Tools shortcuts. That will help you so much, okay? So, so download, yep, cool, and then the keyboard cover, awesome. And then the third thing is, whenever you find yourself using the same shortcut over and over again, what you need to do is just keep an eye on what the shortcut is for it. So for example, track, look here on the right-hand side, and I don't know if you've really noticed these or paid much attention to it, but on your computer, on the right-hand side, it actually shows you what your shortcuts are. And so whenever I find myself, and this is for any program, any kind of, whether it's Photoshop or Premiere or whatever, it usually shows you your shortcuts. And I've only been using Premiere now and After Effects from Adobe for since the beginning of quarantine, so since March. And I already look like I know what I'm doing, because I've learned certain shortcuts that make life really fast. And I've got a friend who's like a professional video editor, and he was going through and he was like, one thing I really recommend is that you learn your shortcuts. And he was showing me different shortcuts, and I was like, dude, I already know all those shortcuts because I'm like a shortcut nerd. So also, I recommend that you become a shortcut nerd because it's going to make your life so quick, and it's a way to really impress clients very quickly, just by how quickly you can work on stuff. And it's the type of thing that once you start doing it, and if you force yourself to use the shortcuts, then you'll get good at it within like a week or just a few sessions of doing it, a few hours. So that's that right there. All right, what we're going to do, let's take a break. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording.